When we think of sleep, of drifting away into the quiet shadows of night, sometimes the mind does not want to rest easily. It searches for something dull, something repetitive, something that feels endless and yet strangely soothing, and for centuries people have turned to numbers and calculations to quiet the restless tides of thought. The Greeks, masters of logic and geometry, had within their storehouses of wisdom endless equations, ratios, and theorems that could occupy the sharpest minds of their time, yet to many of us today, they become the perfect lullabies of boredom, the unending rhythm of figures and sequences layered like stones in an ancient temple. Imagine, if you will, a chamber not filled with music or soft poetry, but filled with the spirit of Ares, god of war, who hides within himself not only the fury of battles but also the strict, relentless discipline of order, of rules, of the kind of structured thinking that Greek mathematics embodied. And so, when we speak of the boring Greek maths for sleep, we wander into the inner store of Ares, where numbers march like soldiers and theorems stand in line like formations, keeping perfect rhythm in their dull but hypnotic patterns. Picture a night when your mind will not close its eyes. You turn, you toss, and you think of stories, but stories excite. You think of songs, but songs stir. You think of battles, but battles rage with fire. Then you remember the Greeks and their mathematics, and suddenly the mind begins to quiet, not because mathematics lacks greatness, but because its greatness lies in its stillness, its unending march of proofs that carry no quick thrill but only a deep, steadying repetition. Think of Pythagoras, whispering into the night about triangles and ratios, about how the square on the hypotenuse equals the sum of the squares on the other two sides, and how this truth will not move no matter how much you fight against it. Ares, with all his fury, cannot shake that line, that proof, that cold discipline of form. Imagine lying in the inner store of his temple, and instead of hearing the cries of warriors, you hear numbers echo, 1, 2, 3, 4, marching onward, an endless line of calculation, and your mind begins to weigh itself down under the steady rhythm. The Greeks built their world on such order. Euclid, with his elements, gathered proof upon proof until the very act of reading them becomes like walking through a labyrinth where each turn looks like the last. You see parallel lines drawn endlessly apart, you see angles bisected with unflinching precision, you see circles inscribed and circumscribed until all sense of freedom fades away into the repetition of logic. In this, Ares himself is tamed, for though his store is filled with weapons, shields, and the cries of war, beneath it lies the foundation of discipline, the kind of order that Greek mathematics imposed not only upon thought but upon the restless spirit. Numbers are soldiers, they line up, they obey rules, they follow steps in proofs that must end only when the commander Euclid declares victory. For someone lying in bed, weary of thought, the sheer dullness of such order can serve as a lullaby. Imagine the multiplication tables of the Greeks, or rather the ratios they so loved, the endless fascination with harmony and proportion. They said beauty was in proportion, but proportion, when repeated without end, loses all spark and becomes monotony. Consider the golden ratio, beloved by philosophers, which appears in art and architecture, but which also can be written out as a never-ending decimal, 1.618, stretching endlessly without closure. As your eyes glaze, imagine counting each digit, one by one, into infinity. That is the song of sleep, the boring hymn of Greek mathematics. Echoing in the halls of the inner store of Ares. The god of war is not known for patience, yet even he had to respect the discipline of numbers. Battles required formations, strategies, counts of men, measurements of fields, divisions of spoils. All of this rested upon mathematics, and so in his store, where spears and shields hang heavy, there are also the quieter tools of calculation. To hear of them is to lose all sense of urgency. Archimedes speaks of circles, of levers, of parabolas, and though his genius was unmatched, the endless technical detail is enough to soften the fiercest warrior into sleep. Numbers do not scream, they whisper. They fold into one another, theorem upon theorem, calculation upon calculation, until the spirit tires. So if you cannot sleep, close your eyes and imagine Ares himself reading you Euclid's elements. He begins with definitions. A point is that which has no part. A line is breadthless length. The ends of a line are points. The surface is that which has length and breadth only. Already your eyelids grow heavy, for such sentences carry no story, no passion, only a relentless order. Ares turns the page, and he begins with postulates. To draw a straight line from any point to any point. To produce a finite straight line continuously in a straight line. To describe a circle with any center and distance. These statements march forward like a row of hoplites, identical, unwavering, unexciting. Sleep presses closer. Yet behind this boring surface, the Greeks believed there was something divine, and perhaps this is why the inner store of Aries contains it. For discipline itself is divine, even if it lulls us. Harmony itself is divine, even if it feels dull. The cosmos was shaped by number, by proportion, by mathematical form, and to dwell upon it endlessly is to enter a realm where time no longer moves. It becomes the chant of the universe itself, a chant so steady that it becomes the perfect background for sleep. In Aries' store, alongside the clashing weapons, lies this unending chant, and it is the hidden song of boredom that is also the hidden song of peace. Consider also the tedious calculations of Greek astronomy, where they mapped the stars and planets with complex geometry, cycles within cycles, epicycles turning around deference. To the scholar, it was dazzling, but to the weary, it is an endless wheel of terms and figures. Mars, the red planet named for Aries himself, was plotted with painstaking care, its retrograde motion explained with long, slow, repetitive geometry. Imagine lying there while someone explains, step by step, how Mars appears to move backward in the night sky, tracing circle upon circle, and how those circles are themselves traced by larger circles, and how numbers upon numbers govern the whole. Your mind cannot keep up. It drifts. It sinks. And what of arithmetic? The Greeks did not delight in large calculations the way we might with modern machines, but they loved ratios, proportions, and sequences. They looked at numbers not as lively friends but as objects of discipline. The square numbers, the triangular numbers, the perfect numbers, they catalogued them, named them, recited them. Imagine lying in bed while someone whispers, 1 is triangular, 3 is triangular, 6 is triangular, 10 is triangular. 4 is square, 9 is square, 16 is square, 25 is square. On and on, without end, until each number loses meaning and becomes simply a weight upon the mind. This is the boring Greek mathematics that Aries keeps hidden, the perfect storehouse of sleep. Some say boredom is an enemy, but in truth it can be a companion. Aries, who thrives on fire and blood, still needs sleep. Even gods must rest, and when he does, it is not with music or revelry, but with the droning hum of mathematics, of logic, of endless theorems. He lies in his store, the walls echoing not with screams but with equations. Perhaps he dreams not of battles, but of endless proofs where nothing happens except the next step, and the next, and the next. Proofs are battles where there is no blood, only inevitability. They fight toward conclusion, but never with surprise, never with chaos. For mortals who seek sleep, to borrow from this store is to borrow the most powerful lullaby in existence. Thus when your own mind refuses to quiet, think of the Greeks, think of Aries, think of the inner store where numbers march endlessly. Imagine Euclid reading by lamplight, Pythagoras whispering ratios, Archimedes muttering about circles, and let the boredom weigh upon you. The more you resist, the heavier it becomes, until your eyelids drop of their own accord. In the end, boring Greek maths becomes not just a tool of thought, but a tool of sleep, a bridge to rest, and within the temple of Aries, amidst the weapons of war, there lies the gentlest weapon of all, the unending, unwavering lull of numbers.